So this is What to Watch Summer 2020. We watched the whole season, so that way you didn't have to.
Which isn't really that significant, because there were only like 10 things this season.
And we're not going to talk about franchise sequels, reboots, or shorts. We're just talking about full-length TV anime that ended this season. Because everybody talks about shows before they've come out and hype them up before they've even seen them. But nobody really talks about shows once they are actually over. So, due to the coronavirus, lots of shows were either canceled or delayed. And a lot of shows that were scheduled for spring of 2020 were delayed and finished this season.
As a result, this has ended up being one of the smallest seasons in recent years.
Also, probably one of the worst seasons overall in recent years. Out of what few shows were able to kind of make it to the finish line, a lot of them were really bad. So we're not going to talk about those. We are going to talk about only 2 shows, because those were the shows that we thought were actually good to watch through all the way to the end.
Worth recommending.
And worth recommending, yeah, exactly.
We're going to start with the dark horse of the season, despite the fact that we both predicted it would be good, Mao Gakuin. So, Mao Gakuin is the dark horse for a very simple reason. It is in this set of works that I typically despise. You have the super overpowered protagonist who the only suspense in any given episode is how he completely and utterly crushes whatever insignificant obstacle opposes him. And Mao Gakuin is really surprising because it somehow manages to push itself just to the right degree to be extremely good. It's a little hard to compare it with things that happen in other shows that are like it, where it just does them better. Mao Gakuin's protag is just better than the other protags.
Within the genre of stuff like light novel adaptations with overpowered high schoolers, so stuff like Sword Art Online, Irregular at Magic High School.
Yeah. Calling out Mahoka really hard there, because that's the main one that I ended up comparing it to, and Mao Gakuin is so much better.
So one of the things that makes it really great compared to something like Sword Art is that the protagonist is actually likable.
And I think a lot of that sort of comes back to the characters around him, where one of the major issues with a lot of those styles of shows is that the surrounding cast ends up being bent to the protag's will.
Mm-hmm. Or just like throwing themselves at him.
And the fact that protag sort of exists and interacts with this world, and everyone who likes protag has a reason for liking protag, makes protag a lot more likable.
I think it helps if you go into Mao Gakuin with low expectations. I think that it definitely stands out relative to the other members of its genre. While it does have a really cool world and it does have like really cool concepts, especially with like the way magic works and stuff in its universe, it's not gonna dive into that. It is just trying to get through the story by the end of its 13 episode run. You can really feel it towards the end, how it is just kind of trying to rush through the material that it has. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that means that like it actually ends up being pretty well paced.
An episode or two leading up to the ending was a bit on the rushed side. The ending itself was really well landed.
The feeling that I was left with was that it was sort of a shame that it didn't have the episode count, that it clearly needed to kind of thoroughly explain the world mechanics and stuff. But at the same time, like, you're kind of sympathetic to it just doing the best that it could with the episode count that it had. And I think that, you know, keeping that in mind, it did really well. We can move on and talk about Teibobu, which is a show about fishing.
The expression I'd use for this show is it's not about if it's propaganda. It's about the quality of the propaganda.
It's kind of, doubling as this tourist campaign, but it's specifically about fishing in this small town in the Japanese countryside, and specifically all of the types of fishing gear that you should buy and all of the places you should specifically go to fish, and
how you should keep the ocean clean.
And how you should keep the ocean clean, and how you should, make sure that you've paid all of your taxes and permits in order to go fishing.
A set of
high school
girls are in this fishing club.
Yeah.
And they go fishing.
And they fish for something different each episode, basically. And there's a new recruit to the club.
They don't fish for something different every episode. They fish for Magochi a lot.
Fishing in different ways and showing off the different, hooks and methods and stuff.
Yes.
They also gut the fish on screen, which is kind of interesting and weird. There is a lot of Japanese cultural elements where, in general...
You catch it, you eat it.
Yeah, and, in general, fish with heads on them and, gutting fish is, not as, squicky as, a lot of people outside of Japan might find it.
And one of the concepts is this idea, which is very relevant to Japan, of the city folk versus the country folk, and how the city folk would find it a bit more squicky, but they need to get over it and come to this little town in the countryside and get fishing.
Absolutely adorable. It absolutely kind of accomplishes what it sets out to do, which is to just kind of be this relaxing show about high school girls that are fishing in the countryside and kind of everything that comes with it.
The characters are overall obviously the main part to enjoy of the show.
Yeah, it actually has likable characters, and they all have their own personalities and dynamics.
Yeah, no one's just a blob.
If you are looking for a good, there's been a lot of these outdoorsy, cute girl shows.
Yes, it's basically its own genre now.
If you want to learn about fishing, it definitely accomplished that. I definitely know a lot more about fishing. If you just want something relaxing and cute, it's also good for that.